cars are massive.
This is a lovely place to be.
They dubbed it the architecture of luxury because of course they did. Hi everyone, I'm Kennan from Cars and Bids, and today we're talking about a behemoth of luxury. This is the Series 8 Rolls-Royce Phantom, and in today's video, we're going to be discussing its facts and figures. First, we'll start out with the Phantom's history and where it fits into Rolls-Royce's past, then we'll get nerdy and talk about some of the technical details, and then we'll take this for a waft. And with that, let's get started. Before I get going though, surprise, surprise, this Rolls-Royce Phantom is currently for sale, being auctioned live on Cars and Bids. This is a 2018 Phantom, and it comes with over $117,000 in options, including the $35,000 Phantom package, which got you these 22-inch wheels, picnic tables in the rear, night vision display, and much more. And if you've been in the market for one of these, after you finish watching this video, click the link in the description below where you can head to the live auction of this one, where you can bid on it and buy it only on Cars and Bids. And we begin the story of the Rolls-Royce Phantom by first going back to the 1920s. In 1925, Rolls-Royce wanted to create an epitome of luxury. They wanted to create a flagship luxury car, and they set out to do so with the first Phantom, the Phantom Series 1, as it's become known to enthusiasts. These cars were bought by heads of state, really important people. That was the whole demographic for the Phantom, and the Phantom was very exclusive. It shared none of its underpinnings with Bentley that would be acquired later by Rolls-Royce. It was always its own car, and it was supposed to be the best. In traditional Rolls-Royce fashion, the Phantom is named after a ghost. Rolls-Royce really likes doing this, and they chose the name Phantom for this car because it was supposed to represent ultra quietness and stealth. That was always the focus of the Phantom, to be as quiet and luxurious as possible. And this tradition would continue for many years. Rolls-Royce would make the Phantom sequentially over its generations, basically up until 1968 with the 6th generation Phantom. That car they would actually make from 1968 until 1990, which isn't the entire story, as the Sultan of Brunei would have 3 cars made between 1995 and 1997. But as you can imagine, that car looked very dated when it came out, but it was made again for heads of state. That was supposed to be more of a parade car, and so it had a specific Rolls-Royce image that these heads of state would want to be seen in. But then in 1998, things would change. BMW bought Rolls-Royce, and they set about making a new flagship for the company, a true ultra-luxury car to re-establish Rolls-Royce as Rolls-Royce and Bentley split ways. And they did so in 2003 by introducing the 7th generation Phantom. Originally, this car was offered only in sedan form, and it was supposed to have a 9-liter V16, but at the last minute, BMW changed their mind and decided to put a V12 in this car instead. However, several V16 examples were produced, and they were known as the 100EX, the most famous of them being owned, of course, by Rowan Atkinson. Rolls-Royce would then go on to make several versions of the Phantom. They would make the drop-head coupe, which of course was the convertible version. Then they would offer the 2-door hardtop version, the Rolls-Royce Phantom Coupe. But it wasn't until 2009 that Rolls-Royce introduced another model into the range, the Ghost. Up until that point, the only Rolls-Royce you could buy was the big Rolls-Royce, the Phantom. Rolls-Royce would produce the Series 7 Phantom through 2016, and during that time, they would make over 10,300 units, which is pretty significant. It was a big deal because this car really established Rolls-Royce in the 21st century. When a lot of people thought Rolls-Royce, they thought about the Phantom. Then in 2017, Rolls-Royce introduced the Series 8 Phantom, and although it doesn't look that different than the Phantom that preceded it, Rolls-Royce would change a lot of subtle design elements and engineering elements to make this car even more opulent. One thing they wouldn't change though would be the engine. This car is powered by a 12-cylinder engine, and we'll get more into that, but it's worth noting that Rolls-Royce until recently only produced cars with V12 engines. The Phantom and the Ghost were both powered by 12-cylinder engines, and with the advent of the new EV range for Rolls-Royce, well, those engines are going away. But nonetheless, when this car came out, if you wanted a Rolls-Royce, it meant that you had a V12 under the hood. And now it's time to talk about the Phantom's overall design. It's important to note that there are two different versions of the four-door Phantom. There's the short wheelbase, which has a wheelbase of 139.8 inches, and then there's the long wheelbase car, which has a wheelbase of 148.5 inches. Regardless of which version you choose, these cars are massive, and that's by design. This car is supposed to be impressive and imposing, but it's also supposed to provide a lot of interior room. Interestingly enough, despite these car sizes, it's important to note that the short wheelbase version of this car actually has the smallest wheelbase of any Phantom since 1939. And so, although these cars feel really big, well, in reality, there have been bigger Phantoms in the past. Rolls-Royce likes to incorporate design elements from their past into their current day road cars, and although this car looks a lot like the Series 7 that came before it, Rolls-Royce chose some interesting design elements from further in their past to work into this design. The most notable design element comes from the silver cloud, as Rolls-Royce realized the front of this car was going to be very squared off and very angular, reminiscent of the Series 7 that came before it, but they wanted the rear of this car to be a little bit more delicate, and so they took the tapered design from the silver cloud and incorporated it into this car, giving it a slightly softer, more refined finish to the rear of the Phantom. The fastidiousness of this design, though, is not only skin deep. Rolls-Royce spent a lot of time developing the aluminum space frame that exists under the sheet metal of this car. They dubbed it the architecture of luxury because of course they did. And the focus of this design was that it was even more structurally sound than the model it replaced, but it was also simpler. Rolls-Royce claims that this chassis uses 30% less welds than the car it replaces, but it gains structural rigidity by 30%. And they were able to accomplish this by using different adhesion techniques and different riveting techniques in order to bring this car together. They also used a more modular design, which resulted in the car being stronger and even quieter than the Series 7 Phantom. And quiet is the name of the game with this car, not only because of its name, as I mentioned before, but Rolls-Royce was adamant that this car had to be an improvement over the Series 7 Phantom, which was already quite quiet. The result is that Rolls-Royce added over 280 more pounds of sound deadening to this car, and they claim that at 60 miles an hour, they were able to measure the decibel rating at 10% less in the Series 8 Phantom than it was in the Series 7. The side effect of this, of course, is that Rolls-Royce added even more weight to this car's design, but frankly, they're not that concerned about it as this car weighs over 5,600 pounds. And so, yes, it is a very heavy car, but hey, at least it's very quiet. But the insanity doesn't end there. We have to talk about this car's flag bearer system. And the way this works is that there are a series of cameras that monitor the road up until 62 miles an hour and determine how rough it's going to be. The car then processes that information and it preemptively adjusts the suspension before you hit any bumps so that this car remains compliant. That is the level of detail we're talking about that Rolls-Royce goes to make sure that their suspension systems are as comfortable as humanly possible. But the suspension trickery doesn't end there. As I've mentioned a couple of times now, this car is massive, and Rolls-Royce decided that, well, the car of this size might be a little bit difficult to move around. And so for the Series 8 Phantom, they introduced rear wheel steering. The rear wheels can articulate up to 3 degrees, up to 37 miles an hour, and 1 degree above 50 miles an hour. The idea with the low-speed articulation is that it allows this car to move around easily at low speeds and in parking situations, and the high-speed articulation allows this car to make lane changes more easily on the highway. Regardless of which situation you're in, Rolls-Royce had your back and made sure that this car was very easy to maneuver, despite its gargantuan size. While I'm in this region of the Phantom, there is one more thing I want to talk about, and that would be this car's tires. As I mentioned, Rolls-Royce went to extreme lengths to get rid of any noise, vibration, or harshness from the road surface in this car, and they went to Continental to develop special tires just for the Phantom Series 8. Using their silent seal technology, Rolls-Royce dictated that Continental add an extra layer of foam to absorb any vibrations from the road. The result is that this car reportedly has a 9 decibel reduction of interior noise just from the tires. That's the level of sound evasion we're talking about with the Series 8 Rolls-Royce Phantom. Now climbing under the gigantic hood of the Phantom, we have to discuss its engine, as it's something special. This is a twin-turbocharged 6 3/4 liter V12 that produces 563 horsepower and 664 foot-pounds of torque. Now, while that doesn't sound like a whole lot of horsepower out of an engine of this size, Rolls-Royce realized and emphasized that their customers really didn't care about outright horsepower. They cared about shove and torque. They wanted their cars to take off like a freight train, and, well, this engine certainly delivers. Of course, sharing its relation with BMW, this engine is based off of the N74 V12 from BMW, but it's special to this car and it has its own name, the N74 B78, which is only used with Rolls-Royce models. And, well, this engine is impressive. Despite this car's ridiculous curb weight, it can get from 0 to 60 in about 5.1 seconds, which is outrageous for what basically is a living room on wheels. Moving inside the Phantom, I want to talk about this car's transmission, as it's a relatively ubiquitous unit that's found in a lot of cars today. It's the ZF 8-speed automatic transmission, which you find in cars like the Alfa Romeo Giulia Quadrifoglio and a whole lot others. But with this car, of course, it's been optimized to the Phantom specifically. According to Rolls-Royce, this car actually uses its GPS system to determine where you're more likely to need this transmission to shift quickly, where you're going to need to downshift to go up hills, or things like that, or long straights where you're going to want all of the power, and Rolls-Royce optimizes the transmission shift points based on its GPS location. That's pretty insane, and honestly it sounds a little bit gimmicky, but Rolls-Royce claims that that's the truth and one of the optimizations they made to the ZF 8-speed automatic. Of course, the engineering doesn't stop there, as Rolls-Royce has spent a lot of time in this car making sure that it's as nice as possible. One of the interesting additions that they made that I wanted to focus on would be this glass gallery that's located here. Rolls-Royce wanted to give their customers the opportunity to customize the inside of their car and make it bespoke to them. You had several options you could choose from Rolls-Royce, or you could have your own special artwork placed behind this glass. But it is just that, it's glass, and that's kind of interesting because it's in a high impact area of this car if you were to have an accident. And so Rolls-Royce actually spent extensive time and money engineering this glass so that if you were to impact it during an accident, it wouldn't shatter into a million pieces into your face. These are the things that Rolls-Royce likes to focus on, while other normal manufacturers are just making sure that their cars meet basic safety standards. No, Rolls-Royce wants to make sure that their glass gallery also meets those standards. Wild stuff. And now we climb into the back of the Rolls-Royce Phantom, and, well, frankly, I don't really have anything to say engineering-wise back here. I simply wanted to sit in the back of this car because this is where you belong in a Rolls-Royce. Just existing in this car's opulent leather, admiring the beautiful Starlight headliner above you. I'm not really even that concerned with how this car drives, to be honest with you, but I think it's time that we take this car out for a waft, because that's what you do in the Phantom. Okay, it's time to drive the Rolls-Royce Phantom. And the thing you're struck by immediately, just right away, is the silence. It's a sensory deprivation tank in here. It's so quiet. I truly can't hear the engine. I always carry water with me whenever I film these because I talk a lot. Your mouth gets kind of dry. I can hear the water slosh in the bottle. Like I could not hear that. I've never been able to actually hear it in another car, so I apologize for that. But like, that's the level of quiet we're talking. Like, there are cars idling around me and I can't hear any of them. It's silent in here. It's borderline disorienting how quiet this car is. So you're struck by that. That's the first thing, is like that level. The next thing is the level of materials in here. Everything is so nice. Everything is just beautifully made, soft to the touch, and just nice. It's nice. Then of course there's the ride quality. You know, everybody, uses the cliche, oh, you waft in a Rolls-Royce. That's not inaccurate. You do waft in this car. It's just so effortless. You just don't have to work. The car handles the work for you. So relaxing. It is so relaxing. And you don't I'm not bothered by people cutting in front of me. Not bothered by any of that. I'm just cruising truly on what feels like a cloud. It's extraordinary. It's really extraordinary. The next thing that hits you is the sheer size of this thing, because it's massive. It's utterly gigantic, and the hood stretches so far out in front of you, and there's the spread of ecstasy of the hood. It's just like you're in a Rolls-Royce, and there's no mistaking it for anything else. But it is truly gargantuan, the size of this thing. Right now, there's a little bit of construction. I'm pulling through an intersection. I have to mentally calculate will this thing fit, or am I going to be blocking the box slightly just due to its sheer size? It's a true land yacht, a car that's just gargantuan. But the level of refinement with this car is so dramatically high. I don't know that I would be able to tell driving the previous generation Phantom and this back to back, that 10% reduction in sound at 60 miles an hour. They're both at such a high level, but this car, it's just so dramatically comfortable, and the quiet is the key to that. Like, I can tell when I touch the accelerator, there's something that happens. It sounds like there's like maybe a car operating like miles away. That's what it feels like. There's a hint that something happens. You can tell you're interacting with something, but that's pretty much it. That's the extent of your mechanical interaction with the way this car sounds. But just sitting in traffic, I'm not bothered by it at all. In fact, it's like I'm kind of fine with it, because it gives me a chance to just look at this interior, which is just beautiful. There's just everything that looks like leather is leather. Everything that looks like metal is metal. It'd be hard to argue with this, like just as a place to spend time. I don't know if it gets a whole lot better than this. Another weird thing about this car is it's like everything kind of just happens in a video game. Like, you turn the steering wheel and stuff happens, but the car doesn't alter pitch or anything. It kind of like slides around. It's like, I can't really describe it. It's really odd. The car changes direction, but it's imperceptible in terms of like the feeling you're getting behind the wheel of the car and in the cabin. Like, you could definitely have a passenger hold a champagne glass and like it wouldn't even jostle it. That's remarkable. That's some incredible engineering, I think, that's just underrated. Like, I'm gonna run over the cat's eyes here a little bit. And like, I know they're there. I can hear them and I can like vaguely feel them, but it's like little pulses. And then you breathe on the throttle and you're off. It increased 25 miles an hour there. I know you can't really get a sense of that at all, but like, I just thought about going faster and it just like goes. Ridiculous. Which I think that's the point with the Phantom. Rolls-Royce said that, this engine doesn't make the most horsepower, but it doesn't have to. Their customers don't care about that. They care about low-end torque. They care about feeling, they care about just advancing. They don't really care about, how much power the car makes. And that's accurate, frankly. In a car like this, you're more concerned with what constellation you're going to have in your Starlight headliner than you are about the actual performance of the vehicle, which I totally understand. When this car came out, I was working at an exotic car dealership in Cleveland, and the photographer and I just wanted to go for just a little drive around the parking lot. And when we did, they were mowing the grass. But I remember getting in the back. He drove because why not? And I sat in the back. We went past the lawnmower. I couldn't hear it. That's the level of refinement that this car offers, and like the level of insulation this car offers. It's no wonder that this is the gold standard. This is the most luxurious car made by the most luxurious manufacturer. And, it's a Rolls-Royce.
All right, and now you join me in the back of the Rolls-Royce Phantom. Frank, one of our BD representatives, is driving this car currently, and
Yes, sir.
this is a lovely place to be. This is how it's meant to be experienced. You sit in the back of a Phantom and the world just goes by. And if you don't want to look at one, well, you simply activate the curtains. Oh, wait, well, not on that side though. There we go. Look at that. Now I don't have to be disturbed by the view. I can simply ward off the sunshine and exist in peace back here. But it's remarkable. Just as the front is so beautifully finished, the back is even more so. Everything is covered in leather. Everything that looks like metal is metal, like I mentioned. Everything has a weight to it. Frank mentioned it too. When you adjust the air vents, everything in here has a heft and a weight to it. It's just truly outstanding. And you get these little hints of this little glitter from the Starlight headliner, and it's just a place to be. This is an incredible experience to be in this car. I'm surprised at how nice it is as a driver, but as a passenger in this car, just sitting here and just like, you could fall asleep so easily. I'm borderline tempted to. We had a late lunch earlier, and like if I had eaten anything heavier, I probably would fall asleep in the back of this car. but it's just extraordinary. Everything is so soft and comfortable, and it's amazing that this is just a car that people buy. It's such a special experience to be in this car. I absolutely adore it. And I could just sitting in traffic or being on the move, it's not relevant. In a Rolls-Royce, it's all just comfortable and wonderful. Everything about it is astonishing when you really think about how difficult it is to engineer a car that accelerates the way this one does, that is as refined as this one is, that is quiet. When you really consider all of these things, it's astonishing that a manufacturer is able to make a car of this caliber. It's really mind-blowing. And it's just a wonderful place to be. All right, let's experience some acceleration in the Rolls-Royce Phantom. Oh. It's almost as like a heavy blanket is pressed upon you. That's what it feels like. It's like almost coddling in a way. Like, because that was not an insignificant speed. Like, this car just goes off, but as the passenger, you're not disturbed by it at all. And Frank, if you don't mind, just like give the wheel a little side to side. Like, you could easily have, I mentioned it as I was driving, but you could easily have a glass of something back here, and that sort of motion doesn't disturb you at all. The roll in the chassis is like non-existent, and this chassis is very stiff, and that's by design. But it doesn't roll, and it doesn't pitch or angle in any obscene way. It's just
certainly not.
Certainly not. Don't be ridiculous. It's an automotive experience like unlike anything else. There's nothing that comes close to this.
And that is the 2018 Rolls-Royce Phantom. This car is truly mind-blowing as it packs a twin-turbocharged V12 engine under the hood, but you'd really never know it because this car is so refined. It also has all of the luxury and technological features you would expect with a modern Rolls-Royce. And if you've been thinking about getting one of these, well, you can buy this one, or should I say you can acquire this one on Cars and Bids. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will talk to you very soon. Goodbye.